All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest. And today I've got the Utah versus Oregon State breakdown. Utah is heading to Oregon State, playing in Corvallis this Friday night. It's a heck of a matchup. Oregon State just lost to a really good Washington State team, or at least a really good Washington State offense. And they are going up against Utah next, that has had some offensive struggles but is clearly one of the best defenses in the country. Bunch of cool storylines. And I think this is the first deep dive of the season where you've got a real good sample size on each team. It's not a super deep sample size. That'll take another couple of games before we really know a ton about each team's identity. But we have a much better feel on the teams now. We got one game of conference play, a couple out of conference FBS games for both teams. So we really should be able to get a good dive on both teams. It should be a ton of fun. I think for me, Oregon State was a little bit of an unknown, and I think you guys are going to see the same thing as we break this down. I was a little surprised exactly what they are on offense and what they are on defense. I'm sure some of you guys out there will agree. I also think they're a pretty beatable team, right? I don't think they're a bad team, but they're pretty beatable, and I'm feeling like you guys will agree with this once we get done. We're gonna go over a ton of information on the offense and the defense for both teams, so I'm excited to dive into that with you guys. So hop on for the ride. Should be a ton of fun. Before we get into it, smash that like button. Lets me know you guys appreciate the content, but also helps get it out to more Utah fans. Also, comment down below anything I'm missing in the breakdown. Do you guys agree with what I'm saying? Who do you think the star players are going to be? Where do you think the matchups are? I mean, we're going to break it all down, but I want to hear your opinions too. Finally, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We put out a ton of Utah Utes football content. It's me and a bunch of other guys that put a lot of work into this channel, and really, I believe, give you the best frequent, deep dive type of content, like real analytical stuff from beginning to end. And we have so many guys on here that do so many great different styles of videos. There should be something for everyone. So please subscribe to the channel. We love having you guys here and building this community. And most of all, make sure you guys share the video. Share it on a Facebook page you like, or with a friend, or retweet it, whatever. On that note, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk Utah versus Oregon State. Okay, guys, we're going to break this down. We're going to start here with opponent passing yards per game allowed. So, how many yards are you allowing your opponents to throw every game? But for both defenses, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at opponent passing yards per game allowed, and I'm also going to look at passer rating allowed. So that'll tell us how much of these yards are in garbage time and how much of these yards are real. And I think the passer rating allowed mixed with the passing yards allowed will give you a much clearer picture of who is the better pass defense and who actually has a good pass defense. So Utah right here, 261.7 passing yards per game allowed. Oregon State all the way down here at 300.3. And that is highly contributed by a really good Washington State passing offense. But let's be clear, Utah's average passing yards allowed per game is highly contributed from a game where Florida, in garbage time, where Utah was playing bend don't break just to let Florida run the clock down, threw for a ton of yards on short little dink and dunk passes. So both numbers are a little inflated here. Oregon State is not at the very bottom. Like, that number would tell you Oregon State's at the very bottom of college football for opponent passing yards allowed. And same with Utah, at least Utah not quite as bad as Oregon State, but towards the bottom. So what we have to look at is opponent average team passer rating allowed. And this is where the story starts to play out a little differently. You got Utah at number 32, one of the better pass defenses in the country at 114.5 passer rating allowed. So Utah's got a pretty good passing defense. And I think, being, objective, we do have some weak spots in the pass defense. I think I talked about it in my live stream on Sunday morning, and I think I'd be disingenuous not to talk about it a little bit. We don't have the great, like, our pass defense does not match our run defense. We have a good pass defense with an elite run defense. And this is a good pass defense. I'd even say close to very good, just making dumb mistakes sometimes. And then we move to Oregon State. They're at 96th in the country with a 150.6 passer rating allowed. So I think it's pretty clear when you consider Oregon State is number 96 in passer rating allowed and they're number 119 in passing yards allowed per game. You adjust a little bit for the fact that they played against Cam Ward, who looked really good, but you also got to consider San Diego State. Their quarterback had the most passing yards he's had in any game all season against Oregon State. So I do think Utah's got a good passing defense. And for Oregon State, their passing defense is actually going to be one of the areas where they can get exposed. I think that's a pretty fair statement. Now let's go ahead and take a look at rushing yards per game allowed. We got two really good run defenses, guys. We got Utah here at number 3, allowing less than 50 yards per game. And then we got Oregon State at 77.3, number 11 in the country, allowing less than 80 yards per game. I mean, you got two really good run defenses, right? These are really good run defenses. But just like with pass defense, we looked at what the passer rating was. I think yards per rush attempt is going to be something important to look at. See how legit these two run defenses are. And Utah, look at this, guys. And this is only including FBS games. Utah's allowing 1.7 yards per rush. The only school above them right now is James Madison University, who has played a incredibly easier schedule than Utah has. So that is awesome to see, dude. That is insane. This run defense, you can see it out there on the field, but it plays out in the stats as well. This run defense is legitimately elite, very impressive. Oregon State averaging 2.7 yards per rush allowed. Kind of tough here. I think they're a very good run defense. I just said that. But you think about it, Washington State does not run the ball. Like, they're one of the worst rushing teams in the country. They do not run the ball. They're allergic to it. It's not what they do. And I think that number's probably boosted a little. Same with the rushing yards per game allowed is boosted a little because of how Washington State plays football. But I'm going to go ahead and break it down this way. Utah has a top of the country elite type of rushing defense. Looks like the best rushing defense in the country for my money, because James Madison's the only better one, but they're not playing the schedule Utah is. And Oregon State has a slightly inflated, I think that's fair, slightly inflated rushing defense, but still very good in that elite conversation. So these are two defenses. Just to summarize both defenses, for Utah, you have a good to very good type of pass defense. I'm going to leave it at good. I don't think we're quite at the very good range. I think we're a top third of college football type of pass defense. And then a run defense, Utah is very, very elite. You're gonna have a tough time running the ball against Utah. Oregon State, their defense is very good, right? They're a good defense, really, really good against the run. Top 15, top 20 defense against the run, but against the pass, they're not like Utah where it's not as good as the run defense. For Oregon State, it seems like the pass defense for them is actually a weakness, and this matchup starts to become very exciting when you see that, right? It looks like for Oregon State, this is actually something that can get exposed. Like I said, it's slightly, it's hurting them a little bit that they just played Washington State that went nuts on their pass defense. But don't forget, they also played San Diego State, like I said, that had their best passing game of the year against Oregon State. So those are the two defenses, and that's kind of the summary of the two. And now we'll go ahead and move into the offenses. All right, guys. Now we're going to look at the offenses, and we're going to look at both stats just kind of flipped, where we look at average passer rating and total passing yards per game for the offenses. And then we'll look at average rushing yards per game and average yards per rush for the rushing for each team. Let's go ahead and start here. Oregon State, looking like a really good rushing offense. This is considering they were behind against Washington State by a good margin, so they did have to throw. They stuck to the run a lot, surprisingly, but they did have to throw at times. 210 rushing yards per game. That's a very good rushing offense, right? You can't ignore that. It's pretty impressive. Utah looking right in the middle of the pack at 147.7. Not great there. Not terrible. Just right in the middle. Let's not forget though, this is a good rushing offense for Utah. It's kind of plagued by our inability to pass early in the season or our unwillingness to call pass plays, however you want to look at it. And let's go ahead and look at yards per rush for both teams. So rushing yards per rush attempt. Let's take a look here. Oregon State looking fantastic at 5.9 yards per rush. That's really good, right? That's going to be a great rushing team in Oregon State. Clearly, Oregon State can run the ball well. We can't really deny that. Utah only averaging 3.6 yards per rush. Again, we are super committed to running the ball. It is just this passing offense has not been getting it going, and it is making the rushing offense struggle. You can tell so far when it comes to our rushing offense against theirs, at least on paper, theirs does look quite a bit better. We got to give them credit where credit's due. I would also say we'll break it down. I do want to point out one thing. Where is Washington State? Because Washington State is clearly the best team they've played when it comes to their schedule, and they're a slightly above middle of the pack rushing defense. So I would say, considering that, they haven't played a ton of good teams, we have played a significantly harder schedule than they have, so that has to be taken into account too. All right, but let's move on to the passing offense. So let's check it out. Passing yards per game. Utah is really going to look rough here. Utah is number 118 in the country, only averaging 145 yards per game. Pretty rough there. Oregon State, a little above the middle of the pack. They're at 252.7 passing yards per game. They're above average according to those numbers. Let's go ahead and look at average team passer rating. I think this will be kind of fun. Oregon State, a little above average at 138.2. So not bad, not great, but a little above average, a decent passing game. And then you've got Utah. Let's see. Boom. Utah 116.9. So I think it's pretty clear when we look at those two offenses. Oregon State has the edge on offense right now, right? That's pretty clear. It's pretty hard to dispute that, at least when we're just looking at the raw numbers on how both teams performed so far. Oregon State has an edge on offense, but I'd also say Utah has a pretty clear edge on defense. From what we're seeing here, if these numbers, if we're going off the numbers on paper, because there's numbers that favor Oregon State, numbers that favor Utah, going off what I'm seeing, Oregon State is probably in the same range as Baylor when it comes to how good their pass defense is. So, not the easiest team we played all year, but from what I'm reading here, Oregon State might be a little more like Baylor than they are like Florida or what was the other team? UCLA when it comes to defense. We've played some good defenses, guys. Don't forget that. So those are the two offenses for both teams. Okay, guys, and the final thing I want to look at before we go ahead and really start diving into the data is going to be the strength of schedule so far. Now that we've got a couple, a few games in, strength of schedule has been updated on team rankings, so you can get a better idea of who all the teams have played. Now, I'm going to before I break down the numbers for you guys, I'm going to go over who everyone's played. Now, we've both played one FCS team, Oregon State and Utah have. This does not count FCS teams. It's only counting the FBS teams you played. Oregon State's resume, San Diego State, San Jose State, and Washington State. Not exactly an amazing resume. Washington State looks like a good team, but those other two you would expect Utah to pretty easily beat, right? I think that's fair to say. And I would expect Oregon State to pretty easily beat them as well. So that's what Oregon State's schedule. Utah has played Florida, who's a top 25 team. Utah has played, what's the other team? Baylor at Baylor, tough road game. And Baylor looked like a lot better against Utah than they did against Texas State. And then finally, they played at home against UCLA, which was another top 25 teams. So I just want to break that down before we look at this. So Utah has played the number 16th toughest schedule in the country, and Oregon State has played the 42nd toughest schedule in the country. Oregon State has not played a cakewalk, right? They've played Washington State, which was a tough team, and they took it down to the wire. Washington State was up big in that game, and Oregon State really almost made a comeback, reminiscent of last year, Oregon State against Oregon. But I think anytime we're looking at any of these numbers, we got to give a decent edge to Utah. Utah has played a significantly tougher schedule where Oregon State has played some of the bottom end FBS teams. When you look at that, SDSU, San Jose State, and then obviously one very good team in Washington State, where Utah has played Florida, Baylor, and UCLA. So definitely two different schedules so far. I just want to break that down before we dive into all of it. All right, guys, real quick, let's go ahead and start breaking down the PFF grades. We're going to start with Utah's offense. Quick disclaimer, Cam Rising could be in. I'm at a point where I'm assuming he's not in until I see him lined up at center. If he's in, I think we'll take a huge advantage over this lackluster Oregon State pass defense. I think that'll be a big advantage for us. But let's go ahead and talk about the guy that will be the starter if Cam Rising is not in there, and that is Nate Johnson. Now, Nate Johnson is not doing terrible on the year. He's not doing good either. He's a 66 grade. That's pretty mediocre. He's a guy that we've all watched out there. I think they've been hesitant to let it rip. They see him in practice. We don't. But I do think this is a game where we just broke down the numbers. Their passing defense is where you can beat them. Their rushing defense is going to be a bad time. If they put 8 in the box and you try to run it down their throat every play, your offense is going to have a bad time. They're going to have to let Nate take shots. If you guys get an opportunity, I put out a video earlier this week that was unleashing Nate Johnson 2.0. Nate Johnson does really well on play action and really well throwing to the middle of the field. Now, number one thing there is play action. So getting him going on play action and getting him going, throwing towards the middle of the field is going to be super important. This is a game where if you're Andy Ludwig, I don't see how you're going to win this game pounding the rock down their throats. Now, I think we'll do a little better than the 2.7 yards per rush that some of those other, less talented running teams have had. But when there's 8 in the box, there's 8 in the box, guys. And this is a tough running defense. We're going to need to throw the ball, especially considering that's where our advantage is. You're going to have to let Nate make some mistakes. It's going to be important in this game. And then let's move on to our wide receivers. A group that has some talent. You look here, even on the PFF grading, Andy, you're looking at a group that's looked pretty decent this year, at least on the high end. You got Mikey Matthews, 73.6, and you got Money Parks at a 67.8. Devon Vele isn't grading out as well, but he had one really bad game in there. Munir McClain's another guy on a smaller sample size, but still 47 snaps. A lot of that is against Weber State. He's a little riskier, but a guy that I would love to see get in there and get some more reps. Micah Pittman not working out super well, but you look here, you got a bunch of slightly below average receivers. And then you got a good chunk of decent receivers, especially just Money Parks and Mikey Matthews alone. And I do think Devon Vele is a lot better than what the grade's showing. And hopefully Micah Pittman can be better too. But I would say when you look at that there, we got a decent receiver core. They're not going to be easy to shut down. And if you can get Nate Johnson in areas where he's comfortable and get him hooking up with that receiver core, it can be a big deal for this offense. All right. And then we're moving to running backs. Okay. The next group is going to be the running backs, like I was saying. Sorry, spaced out there. All right here. So Jaquindon Jackson has obviously been the man for Utah this year. Hopefully he's not injured, dude. That's going to be scary if he's injured. Chris Curry didn't really get in last week, so hopefully he can get some reps. Jalen Glover not grading out super well. Weirdly enough, the worst part of this grade is a really bad pass blocking grade. Good news for us is the running grade is actually, pretty decent for Jalen Glover, above average at least. And I thought like the eye test for me, I actually thought Jalen Glover looked pretty good when he was out there. So it should be at least a solid runner, maybe not the greatest pass blocker. But he did look like he was stepping up. He laid the wood on that one rushing linebacker in pass blocking in the UCLA game. So that should be good. But we have a decent running back in Jalen Glover when it comes to running the ball. Let's move to tight end. So this is an important thing for this offense. Like I just talked about, we're going to need Nate to work off play action and hit routes in the middle of the field if we want to win this game. Now, I can tell you confidently, Thomas Yasmin should not be grading out at a 48.6. I don't know what is going on to start the season, if it's a lack of chemistry with Nate Johnson or he's nervous or whatever is going on. I mean, we played some good defenses, but still, it is time for Thomas Yasmin specifically. And obviously, if Brant Keithy's out there, that'd be awesome for him to be out there. But Landon King, hopefully he gets some reps, pretty decent receiving tight end. But it is time for Thomas Yasmin, Miki Sukataraga, and Landon King to step up, get open in the middle of the field, and give Nate Johnson opportunities. These receivers and especially these tight ends, it's time to have a good game, guys. You can't just go through every game struggling. So hopefully they step it up this week. Okay, now we're going to move on to our offensive line. Let's take a look here. Boom. Okay, so you got Jaron Kump to start off the day. Average to below average pass blocker and below average run blocker. Borderline bad, but not terrible. But Jaron Kump right there, kind of below average in both areas, but not terrible at either. He's had his ups and downs this season. Then we move on to the guards. For the guards, let's take a look for Utah. We got Keaton Bills and Michael Mokafisi. Keaton Bills, decent run blocker, really struggling in the pass blocking. There was also, like I said, guys, these guys have played some damn good defenses. It's not an excuse for some of these grades, but it is just to let you know. You think about that Florida defensive line and that UCLA defensive line they were going up against. Those were not easy defensive lines. You could tell they were talented groups. Michael Mokafisi kind of struggling in both. Not terrible at either one, but pretty below average, borderline bad at both. So you can't have a ton of confidence in this Utah offensive line so far. So far, the tackles have had some highlights. Let's see how they're grading out. Yeah, you got Seitalo Laumea, above average pass blocker and good run blocker. You got Spencer Fano, below average in both. But like I said, guys, I think this will be a day. It's not going to, I don't think our offensive line is going to dominate their defensive line, but I do think when you look at these grades, you really have to take into account who they were playing. These were some good D lines our offensive line was going up against. So now let's move on to the defense for Oregon State. We're going to take a look at their cornerbacks first. From what I was looking at, it seems like this is kind of the highlight of their team. Yeah, they got a couple good corners here. You got to like that. I mean, you don't have to like that if you're a Utah fan, but definitely two good corners. And I think this is just more evident. Like these two guys, good coverage guys, good corners overall, good in run defense as well. This is going to be important. Why it's important to get the tight ends involved in the passing game, because these corners are going to be tough for our receivers. I don't think they're going to shut down our receivers, but it's definitely going to be a tough fight, right? Hopefully someone can step up in that third receiver slot, because it looks like their 1 and 2 corners are good, but not quite as good at the third corner spot, a little below average there. So hopefully we can have a receiver step up and take advantage of that. All right here, another good group of DBs. They got their safety Arnold and their safety Oladapo, 76 and a 77.6. Good grades. And I will say before we move on to the next group, guys, these players have played a much easier schedule than Utah. I mean that is something you got to take into account, right? It's hard not to address that as you look at these grades. So let's look here. Well, this is pretty exciting, right? Finally, a matchup where these guys aren't very good in coverage. They're good against the run, and these are likely outside of the safeties. These are going to be the guys that are covering the tight ends. So this could be a matchup where the tight end starts to get loose a little bit and make some plays. I like to see that a lot. That's good. That's a good sign for Utah. So not exactly great linebackers, good run defenders, but not great against the pass. Okay. Now their defensive line. This is a matchup I've been excited to dive into a little bit here. So their interior defensive line, and make sure, guys, like I said, easier scheduled in Utah by a good margin. So right here, they've got one good interior defender, and this guy who's more of a pass rusher. But the rest of them are below average interior defensive linemen, which is good for Utah because our offensive line has not looked amazing to start the year. All right, edge rushers. All right, at edge rushers, let's look for Oregon State. Boom. Okay, so edge rushers not that great either. You got to actually like some of these matchups for Utah. One guy's a good run defender, one's a decent pass rusher, but I mean, or above average run defender. I mean, I love this, guys, because our offensive line has kind of been, like I said, and I keep prefacing it, it's against good teams, but our offensive line hasn't exactly been killing it this year. So it's kind of nice to see that their defensive line doesn't look great. And don't forget, they are not playing the same talent we are. So I'd actually say when you look at these, it should be about even with their defensive line versus our offensive line. If not, we have a small advantage. Like I said, we played a much tougher schedule than they have. All right, and now that'll do it for Utah's offense versus Oregon State's defense. Just quick thoughts before I move on to Utah's defense against Oregon State's offense. I like our matchup in the trenches. I don't think they're great in the trenches. I don't think we are either right now, but I do like that matchup. I also like that our tight ends, which have not been a centerpiece of this offense for a little while, will have an opportunity to go against some not so great coverage linebackers. That's good to see. So hopefully they can get more involved. And we need a third receiver to step up. I think our receivers will get open, do their thing, but it's two good corners. We got to account for that, and hopefully a third receiver can step up. But I do not hate the way our offense matches up against this defense. All right, guys, and now we are looking at the Oregon State offense versus Utah's defense. So one guy that I think, I thought he was playing decent from what I've seen, but DJ Uungalele is actually playing pretty damn good. I mean, that's a borderline elite grade there from this guy. So good to see again against a pretty easy schedule, but he had like a 73 grade or something like that against Washington State. So not a he's pretty legit. He's a good quarterback, so we're gonna have to respect him. Um, a lot of it is in his running game. He's good in the passing game, but most of it is in his running game. So I'd say keep him contained and force him to throw the ball when we can. All right. Now, moving on to the wide receivers for Oregon State. Let's take a look here. Boom. All right. All right, Oregon State wide receivers. Good receiving core here, right? Oh wow, that's actually a very deep receiving core. Most of these guys is pretty low volume, but you got a pretty deep receiving core. You got four guys here at 34 plus snaps that are all in the 70s. I mean, this is going to be a good receiving core, like we talked about. We were breaking down the numbers. They do have an above average passing game. They're not a slouch when it comes to throwing the ball. We should see some really good players here. They have two stud running backs. Yeah. So Damian Martinez is a beast. He was a beast last year, beast this year as well. Looks really good. 81.6 offensive grade. That's super good. 83.8 rushing grade. Deshaun Fenwick looked awesome last week against Washington State. 76.5 overall grade, 80.9 rushing grade. That's a beast running back room. Tackling those guys in open space is going to be tough, but our defense is definitely up for the challenge. Now, moving to their tight end room, let's take a look here. We haven't faced too many good tight end rooms this year. Seems like it's a bad year for tight ends. Yeah, another lackluster tight end group. This guy's an all right receiver. This guy's an all right run blocker, but nothing too worried about here, especially considering we've got a pretty good defense this year. I mean, pretty damn good defense this year. All right, now this should be the gem of their team coming up here is going to be their offensive line. They do have a very good offensive line. Let's take a look. All right, Oregon State, 73.9 center, above average to good pass blocking and very good run blocking. Looks like a good player for their offensive guard. Let's take a look here. They've got, boom. Yeah, two guards, two monsters as well, 78.5, 74.2. Like I said, easier schedule, but you can adjust for these grades a little bit. Bring this guy down to like a 70, bring this guy down to like a 74. It's still, a heck of grades there. These guys are really good, better in the pass blocking than run blocking, but still really good in run blocking. And then tackles for Oregon State. Let's take a look here. Boom. All right. Okay. You could tell this offensive line, probably the best offensive line we've gone up against this year. This is a really good group. Fuaga, 78.0 grade, 69.7 run blocking. That's almost an elite grade. Pass blocking, 75.6. That's extremely good. Joshua Gray, their worst offensive lineman, but still pretty good. Grading out better than any of our offensive linemen this year. So, real good offensive line here, guys, and they can all basically do it all. It's the only guy that's not a good pass blocker, which we do have some good edge rushers, so that could be an opportunity for us to take advantage of it. But as we move on to our defense, understand that our defense is not a slouch. This is an extremely good Utah defense. So I think interior defenders actually might be the worst part of our defense grade-wise. Oh, wait, this is Oregon State, Utah. Okay. Yeah, you see here, like I said, I figured they might be the worst part of our defense. So, Keanu Tanavasa, 63.8, pretty average there. Junior Tafuna is a guy that gets a ton of hype from a lot of Utah fans. I have not been super impressed. He got a lot of hype his freshman year and just kind of hasn't lived up. Hopefully he does. But I would say if there's one weak spot on this defense, is probably that interior defensive line. Keanu Tanavasa did look good. But now we move on to edge defenders. And I think this will be a bit of a different story. We're going to see some really good players here. Boom. All right. For Utah, check it out here, guys. Jonah Ellis and Logan Fano. I know a lot of hype is around Connor O'Toole coming back, but damn, I don't know how he is going to displace one of these two guys. These, obviously, they rotate in a little bit, but these two are two of the best edge rushers in college football. Jonah Ellis is leading the country in sacks, 89.7 grade, 82.3 run defense grade, 87.4 pass rush grade. Logan Fano, 70.7 run defense. That's a very good grade. And an 80.8 pass rush grade. It's an elite grade. I mean, you really got to be happy with those guys. They look awesome. That is a mean edge rusher duo. And for an Oregon State team, I do not think they've seen an edge rusher combo even close to what they're going to see when we come in there. Now, cornerback has been another position I'm excited to take a look at, but has not been the best position for Utah this year. You take a look here. Te'o Johnson is actually grading out really well. He was playing a little bit of free safety. I think he might continue there a little bit, especially against a team that likes to run the ball as much as Oregon State does. My guess is Te'o Johnson is going to be back at free safety. Cole Bishop and Vaki are going to be in the box to help with the run support. Travis Broughton. What I like here, guys, I think Miles Battle's grade's a little high, honestly. I'm not surprised his coverage grade's the lowest of this group. Zamaya Vaughn, it's not been where I wanted to be, but it's not bad. Don't forget he's also covering number one receivers and guys like J. Michael Sturdivant, right? Who's the other guy? Oh, Ricky Pearsall at times. I'm just saying he's gone against some good guys, so I would say he's a good number one corner, or at least above average. Not great so far this year, though. But considering the cornerback room is one of the weaker parts of this defense, you got to be happy with what we're seeing here. They don't look bad. So now we move into the safeties room, one of the better parts of this defense so far this year. And they're going to be probably up in the box helping with run support. Let's take a look. All right, both of them grading out good grades. Sione Vaki, a 70.2. Both good run defense grades. Cole Bishop, a 73.1. You got to be happy with what you're seeing there. And the other guys probably won't get in too much of safety this game, but that's a good Utah safety group that looks awesome. Now it comes to probably the outside of the edge rushers, this is probably the best group for Utah. Let's take a look here for Utah. The linebackers, I mean, damn, son. Look at that, dude. So Karine Reed, 86.8, 78.6 pass rush grade. He's currently the number 2 linebacker in all of college football. I mean, just looks like a straight monster, dude. He looked so damn good against UCLA. Lander Barton graded out as the number 29 linebacker in all of college football, 79.5 grade, 86.2 run defense grade. You guys think you're running on Lander Barton? Good luck. Just looks awesome. Levani Damuni also looked really good. He did not get in the game last week. He only got 2 snaps. I wonder what's going on there. Don't know any information there, but I was surprised. Or actually, I don't think he had any snaps from what I saw. So little surprised at that, but that's the Utah linebacker room. So you think about that, guys. We have 4 players on this defense that are a 79.5 grade or higher. Lander Barton, 79.5. Karine Reed, 86.8. You got Jonah Ellis in 89 grade or something like that. It was crazy high 80s grade, and Logan Fano in 80 grade. I mean, you better come correct if you're Oregon State, dude. I think it's clear the real battle in this game. I mean, for sure, Utah's offense needs to not look lifeless, but at the end of the day, the real battle in this game is the Oregon State offense against this Utah defense. Can they put up a decent game against this defense? I think this defense right now is playing elite, playing out of their damn mind. The only slight you could say is maybe not super good against the pass, but still looked pretty good by the numbers we looked at. So that's the Oregon State offense against the Utah defense. All right, guys. And in a second here, I'm going to break down the position battles, talk about which matchups Utah needs to win in order to win this game. I'm also going to talk about what I think about the matchup, just kind of talk about how I think this game is going to go and what Utah needs to do to win this game. Not going to be an easy game, but definitely winnable. So before I do that, though, please make sure you guys smash the like button. Also, comment down below. What do you guys think so far? Do you guys think Utah should easily win this? You think it's going to be a tough game? I mean, what did this data tell you guys? I'd love to hear it. Also, make sure you guys, if you came this far into the video, subscribe to the channel. Seriously, if you guys love Utah Utes football, I don't know where else you'd want to be subscribed to. Also, share the video with a friend or share it on Facebook. Okay, let's talk about it, guys. So a couple matchups that are really important for Utah. Our interior defenders, right? Junior Tafuna, Aliki Vimahi. Aliki Vimahi's probably out the first half, so it's probably Junior Tafuna and Keanu Tanuvasa going up against the interior offensive lineman for Oregon State. I think even when you adjust for talent and strength of schedule, Oregon State's going to have a pretty good advantage in the middle of that offensive line against the middle of our defensive line. They need to hold steady. They don't need to have an amazing game, but they need to do decent against this Oregon State tough interior offensive line, right? You got to hold your gaps. You got to hold your lanes. I think they're capable of doing that. I think that's one of the reasons their grades are so low is they're really focused on gap filling. That's what they do on defense. And then I think our edge rushers need to get back there and beat the crap out of these offensive tackles and beat the crap out of DJ Uyunglele in the pocket and just make him have a bad day, dude, which they're absolutely capable of. I think that's going to be something that for sure happens, but that is an important one that they get back there and have a big day. Also, our linebackers, this is a really good rushing offense, 2 really, really good running backs, but we have 2 elite linebackers and a third very good one that could possibly be out there in Levani Damuni. I think it might make sense why we didn't see him a ton in the last game. I think the game plan when we go against, heavy rushing offenses is going to be Teo Johnson at free safety, Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki in the box, and we're going to run cover 3. I wouldn't be shocked if that's what we see again today, and maybe some reps by Levani Damuni, but not a lot. That's my guess. But when we're in the open field and we have to make a tackle on these running backs, we got to get it done. We have to make the tackle, okay? Really important. That's going to be the matchup right there. I don't see that being a huge issue for us. I think they have a very, very good rushing game, but I think we have an elite rushing defense. It's going to be a problem for their running game. And then that's going to put DJU in 3rd and 5 plus situations, right, where he has to throw the ball, or at least 3rd and 4 plus where he has to throw the ball. And our corners need to hold strong. Teo Johnson's probably going to be over the top. And then we're going to have Zamiah Vaughn and either Travis Broughton and Miles Battle on the other side. There was some concerning signs from our second cornerback last week. Miles Battle blew a lot of coverages. I mean, I saw 2 of them. I'm not sure if there were more, but that didn't look good. So whoever's at the second corner spot, they need to step up. They need to know their assignment. They need to do their job, right? So that's kind of how I see it going. Their offense against our defense. Those are the key matchups. I think if our defensive line, especially the edge rushers, can do what they know how to do, we can definitely, have a great day against this offensive line. Like, not only are our guys grading a lot better, they've also played a much tougher schedule. And when you consider that, I think this offensive line could have their first bad day of the year for Oregon State. So we do that, and then the corners don't blow your assignments. You're gonna let up some passing plays. Like, it's gonna happen. We don't expect you guys to be elite, but do a good job, right? Don't miss an assignment completely. If some guy catches a jump ball on you, it is what it is. If some guy is wide open because you didn't know where you were supposed to be, that's a different problem. Like, you need to step up. You need to know your assignment. You need to study your playbook. All right, now another big matchup. Like, I feel pretty darn good about our defense against their offense. I do think that's where the real matchup is, but I feel good about it. I think they could get some shots on us throwing the ball, but I don't see that happening too much. I think there'll be a couple big plays in there, a couple chunk plays, but I don't think they're going to throw the ball all over this defense. And now moving on to our offense against their defense. So the big matchup for me is our offensive line against their defensive line, right? We played a much tougher schedule, and I think when you adjust for that, it's about down the middle with our offensive line against their defensive line. If not, we have a slight edge, right? So that's a good sign, but they need to hold up. We can't have another day where 2 of our offensive linemen don't show up. Like, that's kind of how it's been all year. Like, we have 2 guys every game with really good grades, 1 guy with a average to below average grade, and 2 guys that just crap the bed on this offensive line. Give Nate Johnson the opportunity, dude. Hold your blocks. We broke it down. If you guys want to watch the video, I put out a video, Nate Johnson Unleashed, how to unleash Nate Johnson 2.0 early this week. And you got to keep him in a clean pocket. He can make the throws when he's blitzed, and he can make the throws when he has a clean pocket, but just make his life a little easier, dude. At least don't be the reason we don't know what Nate Johnson is. Hold your blocks. So that's going to be an important matchup. Hopefully we can win that battle. I feel decent that we can. I actually was surprised how not exceptional this Oregon State defensive line is. Excuse me. They have good linebackers. I do think we're going to move their guys on the offense, like in the trenches. I think we're going to move their guys, and I think our running backs, especially if Jaquindon Jackson is in, will actually do pretty well against their linebackers. The linebackers were pretty good, but I'm not that intimidated by this defense. I think where this defense actually does really well is in their DBs, which was weird because that is not what the data showed. That very good graded DBs. Some of them were better run defenders, but they were all pretty decent in coverage, which tells me that a lot of the yards to get in the passing game are going to be in the middle of the field, which is where Nate Johnson shines. And that brings me to the next point. We are going to need to throw the ball against these guys. And that might mean that Nate Johnson turns the ball over. I know we're super afraid of him turning the ball over, but that might need to happen once for us to win this game, right? We are going to need to let Nate Johnson cook a little bit, let him take shots, like get the run game going. I actually think we can run against these guys. But if they stack the box with 8 people, that's going to be tough. And Nate Johnson is going to need to hit. Andy Ludwig needs to call play action. I broke it down in the Nate Johnson video. He does super well on play action. Call play action, let him roll out, let him hit his guys in the middle of the field. Please, God, make sure you do that. I'm going to be shocked if that doesn't happen this game. It has become abundantly clear. Play action, let him make throws in the middle of the field is where Nate Johnson wants to live. But Nate Johnson's going to need to step into the game, right? I talked about a lot of other people that need to do their thing. Nate Johnson making some throws is going to be necessary for us to win this game. Now he could be, 2 touchdowns, maybe 1-2 picks. Like this all could happen. but I think that's better than 110 passing yards because we are not gonna, if they put 8 men in the box, we're not running the ball like crazy against this defense. And they're gonna dare Nate Johnson to throw, and he's gonna have to step up the play. I think this is gonna be a huge game for Nate, where this is a pass defense that has some opportunities to take advantage of them. Is he capable of doing it? And is Andy Ludwig capable of calling a game plan that is good for Nate Johnson to get this done? I'd be shocked if we come in with the same game plan as UCLA, guys. This is not UCLA. This is not this insane elite defense. This is a good defense, much better at running run defense than they are at pass defense. Okay, so don't freak out about it. So those are my thoughts, guys. I think we're going to need to throw the ball to win this game. I think that'll open up the run game too. And I actually think once they don't have 8 in the box, our rushing offense will actually do a decent job against these guys. So that's kind of how I feel. Final thoughts. I think my gut tells me this is going to be not the highest scoring game. But when I look at the data, we're going to need to throw the ball to win this game. And I think that means we're going to see the score a little higher than I previously anticipated it being. I think I'm going to go with this score. This is going to be my prediction. 24-20 for Utah. Utah wins 24-20. They win by 4 points. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a very realistic score. I think our defense is really going to give these guys problems. And I think if we win this game, our offense is going to need to throw the ball and put up a decent amount of points. Nothing crazy. I could actually see it being even like 24-17. I think they're going to have some problems against this defense. So hopefully our tight ends, our receivers can get open, give Nate opportunities. Our offensive line can hold strong because we're not running against 8 in the box, guys. we can't just do that every game. And this is the first team where I don't think it's going to be realistic to do that. We're not holding these guys to 14 points. I don't see that happening. Now, I do want to make one quick statement. I know I said it. I'm not going to guess whether Cam's in or not. If Cam is in, I see us getting a lot of passing yards on these guys. I think it's going to be a 250, 300 passing yard type of game for Utah. A little bit of that just Cam knocking the rest off, but they're not going to be able to hang with Cam with this pass defense. So, and once we have Cam into, that opens up the run game, and I can see us rushing for a lot of yards on these guys if that happens. So that's where I'm at, guys. Again, please make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, share the video, whatever. I'm out of here, and go Utes.